Alright, there's the mic. Let's see. I've been fiddling around with interfaces for hours. There's so much left that I could probably do here. There's more menus. Each of these buttons leads to another screen similar to these. It's basically a never-ending chain. I'll pull up the oldest project. Let's go, come on. And we will just start it in windowed mode. Hopefully the volume's not too crazy, because I don't want to blow out my own eardrums here. No. Let's go ahead and... Oop. Alright, well, hopefully that's not too much louder than my voice. Captain.
Greetings, Captain.
That's me. So, normally...
Docking.
These menus basically just... First layer, then you enter the second layer, or you can go to... There's two different ones. And then you go to another layer to purchase stuff, buy and sell things. There's a bunch of errors all over this somewhere. It mostly works the way I wanted it back in the day. Excuse me. But they're pretty much all the same format. So you can get a repair from that guy. There's also outfitting. Should be repair refueling. I believe, yeah, repair refueling, outfitting, weapons and modules. And some of those menus were broken, like that one. Oops. Alpha, Delta. A lot of the old graphics from the original Alpha Beta, there's still so many little pieces. From the very beginning, I kind of had this concept, at least in mind, and looking all the way back, I think the earliest one of these might have been from 2015, but it was before I really started diving in. This is probably the very first prototype of this entire project. Some kind of space interface goes here. And, I had the layout, I had this kind of idea of where I wanted things to be, and I know, over time I kind of, shifted where some stuff was, where I wanted actual spacing to be, and as I was going along, it was just a lot of really horrible placeholder artwork. And this was way before I even started really working much with graphics. I think I hand drew that little asteroid. Planets were circles, just a bunch of circles, and really mediocre pixel art, some pixely bones, very pixel bones. But yeah, the concept was there. Resources are scarce. Pee and poop are everywhere. Placeholder, as I said, I didn't know what else to do half the time, so as I was going along, I was just kind of using these really simplistic solid lines and very basic shapes. Um, I think this was some kind of terminal font, and everything kind of looked terrible. And so that was 2015, and eventually, over the years, I fiddled around. I got better at what I was doing. I learned a few things, and I want to say, what was it, 2017? I was kind of taking a little pause. Everything evolved into what was originally like pseudo flat 3D stuff, and became this more detailed 3D chaotic mess. Because as fun as it was to drive around this little car in 3D, totally had no idea what I was doing with movement, and really it couldn't make the vehicle feel correct, and eventually overwhelmed myself with 3D modeling, and really I just I needed to finish the game. I needed to make the things work. But then as I started focusing on graphic stuff, I got more and more into the graphical side of things, and really a lot of the stuff you see in these games, in these projects, they're the precursor to all the Screaming Brain Studio stuff. They're, my original experiments working with the World Creator software, and I still have most of my old there's a lot of parts. There's a lot of parts buried in this program now, and I've copied things from computer to computer to computer over the years. So there's maybe a good decade's worth of strange graphics and animation work and pieces and tools. Some of this stuff is things that came with the program. This kind of stuff. But there's a whole bunch of my own isometric work. It's a really strange program in general, but I'll show it off more eventually. And for now, it's mostly, I'm probably going to demonstrate some of the stuff I'm doing for interfaces more than anything, because it's similar to work that you could do in GIMP or Photoshop. There's little image editors you can draw with, and it's got some basic tools and shapes, and you can do color picker. There's what you'd expect from a standard drawing tool, but you also have this cool little palette workspace that you can use to assemble things, and there's actually a merge function which is really useful to create very specific pieces, and that created it weird. And being that it's old, it actually got abandoned before a lot of problems were fixed. And since I've been working with it for so long, I've grown used to most of the bugs, most of the issues, most of the quirks, and a lot of the times it's just small details I can manually edit somewhere else in a GIMP, or you export the images anyways. Everything you make in this program is drag and drop, so you can just slide things around. Very interesting, and I'll probably get into that more another time, but for now, going through the original project, you can see like a clear point where you could kind of tell my focus started to take over, and I was just totally into the concept. And a lot of this is getting remade. A lot of this is going to be Captain Booty Butt. A lot of this is going to be remade for the new project, but there's some parts that are changing, some parts that I'm scrapping. I do kind of want to keep a rover type gameplay, but I don't know what depth or how 3D or how involved it's going to be, or if it's going to be stuff like originally you'd view from the cameras and interact with the planets. But I started working with more and more of these graphics programs and getting the hang of creating textures, and some of these are incredibly ugly at the time, but early work with some planet texture work, converting them into planets. There's a lot of precursors to what ended up becoming Screaming Brain Studios overall, which, you know, if you go to screamingbrainstudios.com,
Go to screamingbrainstudios.com.
this is going to echo, holy moly, where all this stuff is. You know, you can see some of these similar things in the early projects, which is pretty cool. And over time, it just got more complicated, more interesting, more involved. But I'm currently still using some of these old placeholders. But everything was too small. As I said, it was, from this to this crazy experiment with first-person views and hundreds of menus. Now it's going to be an undertaking. It's definitely going to be a lot of work. Still working on buttons. Still working on interface parts. There's a lot of things that are going to need interface parts. I think my 001 got closed by Steam. No, it didn't. It just got tabbed out. So back in 001, Game Creator. That's another one. I haven't talked too much about the engine here. It's a really cool, affordable tool from software that's often on sale on Steam. You can get it pretty cheap sometimes. It's probably about the price of a PlayStation game. And everything you make with it is yours to release, sell, distribute for free, put on itch.io, Steam, whatever. It's capable of doing mobile phone games. If you like mobile phone stuff and you want to make games for phones, you don't actually have to ever even learn how to code. It's a whole bunch of flowcharts and nodes. If you've been watching or if you're familiar with 001 Game Creator, a lot of it's just visual coding, and you can translate most things into 001-ish, whatever the language you would call this, from your standard programming languages. So it's pretty easy to quickly prototype ideas, concepts. You can throw visual stuff together, and that's a lot of the things I like to test the Screaming Brain Studios graphics out in 001 Game Creator. A lot of stuff that I make specifically for game development, like interfaces and tiles in general. It's usually that or tiled map editor, and tiled map editors not compatible with 001, but it's still it's got its uses. I definitely test terraforming and auto tiles and the different types of if you want shadows and stuff to form around the sides of walls, you need to actually set up these tile sets in complicated ways, and I've gone ahead and done that in a lot of cases with the assets that I release, and they're all public domain, so you're totally free to use any of them however you want. These are some new ones that I've been working on that they're not quite done. You can see there's some graphical wonkiness where the bricks are too big and they're not lining up with the doors, and in some cases I think it's possible for me to do a little bit better shading work on the sides. But these are coming along. There's a whole bunch of, different tiles that you could already get that are pretty much in the similar style, but there's more coming. And I definitely like testing them out in tiled map editor, and I love testing things out in 001. If you ever use 001 Game Creator, you can totally use them inside 001. All the assets, they're fully functional. I don't have anything formatted for this engine particularly, but you can definitely use them in this engine. There's a lot of stuff that I import and test out, like isometric stuff and walls and little models and whatnot, but pretty much everything here is done using the same methods and the same techniques and tricks that are a lot of them are demonstrated on the Screaming Brain Studios website in the tutorial section. Not all of them. Some of them are more complicated, like the animated surfaces of stuff and these atmospheres aren't covered yet, but it's a lot of it's simple tricks and blend modes. And most people, if you've worked with GIMP or Photoshop, you're pretty familiar with some of the techniques and tricks. A lot of additive blending or multiplicative or dividing and stuff. There's some subtractive stuff going on in some places, in some of the texture work and all that, but it's ultimately my goal to just put things together like this. I can test all my graphics out and probably, maybe eventually, have enough here that helps somebody. If only these streams could stay stored longer than they are. They could be used as reference material or whatever, but it'll be fun to at least show off some of the stuff I'm working on as I work on it, because stuff that takes up most of my time anyway, I might as well record it for you guys. So the button program, it's by the same company that did this one. They just kind of, I think it uses a series of pre-built masks and shapes that it can create these buttons from, and there's all kinds of different shapes and stuff. So I've created a bunch of templates for my own projects and color palettes and all that. And so some of that's what's already available on the Screaming Brain Studio site that you can grab. I put some together manually. There's been a lot of editing involved in a lot of these projects, or a lot of these packs. So there's some things like buttons, and there's where's the other ones? There's some more here somewhere. There's like textured buttons and some that have labels, all kinds of like simplistic gaming buttons for general game jam stuff. There's a lot of things for prototyping and whatnot. So let's jump back into this one here. Trying to make sure all these buttons are all working without firing any errors anymore. And the ones that are popping up for this one here are incorrect, so it's trying to load the shipyard buttons instead of the buttons that it would load. So I think I'm going to just duplicate the shipyard buttons and make them story node buttons. I'll drag and drop that over there. So when I enter the story node, I want it to open the buttons for the story node. So I'll just come in here and we'll change that to story node buttons. We want them to be parallel in this show hide interface thing here, because we want them to line up or still be accessible while this little monitor is selectable, because we can hover over this at the same time, and if we set those to overlay, we won't be able to hover over our monitor anymore. So that should fix that. But now we have two buttons, repair and refuel, and those are incorrect, so I'm going to change those. The buttons, I believe, are listen or speak or investigate. I might actually have a screenshot of that, but I don't know. Rigel, inspect and talk. So I could use speak and inspect. Capital speak, dingus. Get out of there. And inspect. So now, oops, you gotta change the button backgrounds, the actual buttons, to match the labels so nothing gets confused. Speak button, which, since this is a duplicated interface, it'll already be associated with the field speak. And the refuel button is already associated with the inspect, but we need to change the name to inspect button. And then we've got the return button here, which we want to cancel not the shipyard, but the story node. Doot, doot. And I don't remember if there's anything in here that fiddles with it. No. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Everything looks peachy. Alright, so back to the story node. Make sure that the cancel trigger is correct, because when this field is canceled, we want it to cancel. So area selector will clear out. Turn off this, not the trading post buttons, but the story node buttons. I'll just go ahead and put the comment in. Turns off the story node interface. And that restores the station cam header to its normal state, returns the active interface to the docking station. Docking station active. And it hides, no, it turns on the station buttons, updates the buttons twice, because we have to update the buttons twice here, because who knows? Something about the way the interfaces update. When the fields aren't set to update real time, sometimes you have to do that. It's not a big deal. Now, I can still dock from miles away, and all of our buttons are working. None of our mouse overs are working at the moment for some reason, so we want to fix the mouse overs. And it's going to be different for each one, even though they're all spawning from one little guy. And that's an interesting one to do, because we'll have to use a multi-comparison branch or some such to retrieve a different value for each one. So you kind of want to do it like this, where you want it to be field this dot name, so it checks the name of this field, and this field's just going to have the name that's shown on the button, single word, lounge, shipyard, or no, trading post, whatever. If field this name, this is the regular comparison branch. I need the multi-comparison branch because we want to check multiple values. And you can always dig through this to get to the scripting ID use value. You would just select this to get the ID of this field, and you can also type it in. I usually type it in because it's just, sometimes it's easier to do that, but if you're new to the use value stuff, you probably want to go through the menus. And if field this name is equal to trading post lounge shipyard, I always forget the other one because I'm a dingus. Trading post and I am a dingus today. That's a real brain fart. Value the request board. So that basically sets it up to check the name if it's equal to one of these four, and that's just going to be the default for at the moment: trading post, request board, lounge, shipyard. And we will go ahead and attach one of these to each. So this is the trading post. This one's going to be for the request board. I'll go ahead and throw in some comments on these two. Tool, tip, hover. What is this one? Trading post. Hover tool tip for trading post. Hover tool tip for this is definitely connected to the request board. And then the hover tooltip for the lounge. Just to keep track of everything. And the shipyard. So then the very, very last branch there is if it's equal to anything else. So that's pretty much where everything that isn't one of these four is going to go. Story node and otherwise. So I'll just put a temporary value here for story node, but I'll call it anything else. Story node here. Gua. And we'll go ahead and change these tooltips. Head to the request board. You can pick up bounties and errands. Credits. And the lounge. Pay to hear local rumors or hire crew members. And the shipyard. Head to the shipyard. You can have the ship repaired or refueled. And I'll probably adjust those tooltips eventually as I go. And I think that should do the trick, unless I forgot to hook something up somewhere. So we'll go to the station.
Docking.
And all of our tooltips are back. Story node here. Wow. Head to the trading post. Head to the request board where you can pick up bounties and errands. Head to the lounge where you can pay to hear local rumors or hire crew members. And head to the shipyard where you can have the ship repaired or refueled. So we've got oopsie doopsies. I forgot to change a few things back in the story node buttons. No, it was this story node buttons. That one's trying to do something with the refuel button. So I'm quickly going to fix that because I don't want it to do that. Docking station, docking hover. Inspect the area. Temporary, change this to inspect button. Probably forgot to change a number of these. Inspect. Oop. Inspect. Confirm and confirm. Actually, there's probably more in there. Let's start from the top. Oh yeah, just a couple more. Oop. Inspect button. And whenever this field is red, it means something's incorrect or missing. So sometimes you can just change it to the correct name and it'll fix it and update it. And that's really all I have to do for that one. The speak button's probably going to do the same crap. So touchdown. I want that to be speak instead of repair. Probably watched me do this earlier. And then we're going to change that from repair to speak. Speaky. And back here in this one, we're going to change all of these to speak. I know this is really exciting. This is part of, this is definitely part of working on the interfaces, and I think I can remove some of these conditionals here because I don't think they're doing anything. One more, and it should be good. Speak button. Ta-da. Wapow. Okay, so that shouldn't fire any more errors, I believe. And we'll go back in and test it. Look at those fancy Canyon graphics. These are planets from the planet texture pack that I've got available on itch.io or on my website or Open Game Art as well. Just you can use them in a number of ways. You can put them on 3D spheres, or you can convert them into circles or spheres with GIMP. They end up looking really nice. They're spherical textures already, so you can rotate your spheres however you want and use these textures. It's actually really cool. But I'm going to use them as well in this project just to show you guys the graphics in an actual project or something. So now these work. Have the ship prepared for credits. I forgot to change the mouse over, but that doesn't matter. Everything works, and there's no errors at the moment. We've got no button sounds yet. I haven't put any sounds, really. Got a couple clicky noises for highlighting buttons and stuff, but I haven't attached them to every button yet. But now you can navigate between the different space station locations, and I guess I clicked on something behind. I haven't. I don't think you should be able to do that. Did I click through the map? Well, that'll be something I have to figure out too. I don't know if you guys saw that, but I clicked on something. There, yeah. Okay, I think I know what's going on there. Over here in this top part, not that. There is a background up here. I think it's set to ignore. One of these is not blocking the cursor when it should be. Which one of you is it? Maybe I'm wrong. No. I'll have to turn it off on a number of these fields. I think I ended up doing something involving copy-pasting at one point. And copy-pasting works sometimes. Oh, that noise. Shush. Now, the ignore cursor is great in a lot of cases. You want to just display some graphics over top something else, but you want to be able to click the stuff that's behind it, like the icons on the docking orbit menu. You can actually see some examples of that. There's some frames that are on top of things, but if the ignore cursor is turned on, you can click right through it. I actually am not sure if, oh my god, I'm not sure if it's one of these fields that's giving me the problem, but I seem to be able to click through the interface, which should not be able to. I do have a couple ideas on how to fix it if it's not me clicking right through the interface. Oh my god, I'm sorry about all the ding ding sounds. How are we at? Oh, I have a viewer, do I? Or is it just me? So it's not my background. It's not the cam or the scan lines, because those are solid. And then there's the bottom background. So where am I clicking through? There must be a space or a gap somewhere. I'm not even sure. But there's a couple ways I could probably solve that. I could have a solid color in the background covering everything. Or I could just make it so nothing can be clicked when the menus are on. That's a pretty easy one. It'd be a mouse touch down, and then you activate the actor, which I don't want. let's just go ahead. It's a quick fix for now. I'm not sure if this is what I'm going to use, but if a menu is on, nothing is clickable. And that works because if it's on, it goes to the left and there's nothing over here. And if it's off, it'll take this path and continue down the normal route. So now, at the very least, it shouldn't be able to click through if this menu's on. That is, as long as I remembered to turn that switch on whenever I open a menu.
Docking.
And it does seem like I cannot click that guy anymore. Cool, so that's one way I can fix it. I'll just stick with that for now. Let's, what was I doing?
Out of range.
The planet stuff.
Scanning.
I think I was doing some animations or
Entering planetary orbit.
oh yeah, getting these buttons to work. Accidentally hit my turbo button there. So I still have. There's
Life forms detected.
currently no behavior set up to distinguish the different types of hotspots to the buttons. They have no idea. They don't have any actions yet. You can click on them and it makes a thing blink. This one doesn't actually do anything. It's removing the tooltip when I push the button, but it shouldn't do that. I think it's supposed to do it when I release. I'll fix that as well. I've got a little to-do list, which, goodness, is a disorganized folder, so ignore it. Let's say surface buttons should not clear the hover tooltip. And that's just because I don't know why. It looks kind of silly flashing the results when you click a button. So we'll get out of that. All of these log messages. So it's interesting that pretty much every graphic in this is made using almost all the same tools. There's a couple that use Genetica Studio, another. That's going to slow things down, I bet. But it's another fun little tool. I'll just pull it up really quick. I won't get too in depth, but it does a lot of animation stuff for me. Or I do a lot of animation stuff with it. That's laggy as it's opening. Well, lag. So it's a texture creation program that you can essentially create 3D shapes. There's all of my. There's stuff like stereograms and generators for hair and shapes and polygons, and it has some, like it says, advanced. It's mostly combinations of these different types of nodes to create and generate all kinds of, shapes and patterns, and running things into each other. You can actually generate a whole bunch of cool stuff with them. This isn't going to do anything, but you can go through the different. There's hundreds of different options for generating patterns, natural organic patterns, to create stuff like marbles and rocks, and then there's more rigid stuff like actual patterns and alternating tiles, and they're great for doing more intricate, like interior floors and walls or ceilings, cathedrals. I won't go into this one very much, but a lot of that I tend to use for textures for the planets and stuff. planets. The star is animated using a bunch of procedurally generated noise, and then they're moved through using a positional curve. The curve actually moves through the noise to change the. It's hard to explain it without doing it in the program. It's moving through like the z-axis of this noise field and combining several of them together. And then there's another process to colorize the different gradients and shades, or the shades, the lighter and dark values here. And then you end up running it through another set of spherical gradients, point light generation, and that's how you get this little shine on it, or kind of a glow. There's still some more work I could do on some of the details, but there's no glow or anything on the planets. The sun is shining light. I don't have any kind of specular or reflectivity on any of the planets. Those are all straight from the, if you were to go to my graphics, they're planet textures. Good lord, there's too many things in here. Planet textures here. It's mostly just equirectangular surfaces that you can grab these for free on itch.io or Open Game Art or my website, wherever. They're perfect for creating little planets or space games. There's probably 100 or more, and I'll show off how I make those into planets as well, and how I use the textures from them or blend them into textures. There's some tricks I'm still trying to wrap my head around. There's one in particular about projecting the surface of a sphere onto the surface of a cylinder to get a cylindrical projection of some type, and there's still a process eluding me at the moment, and there's some stuff that I would like to do with that. But in the meantime, I'll work on some of this graphic stuff. Get out of tiled editor here. I don't think I need all of these open. And my station buttons. This is a very simple interface, and it has, surprisingly a large amount of interactivity, and covers up the whole interface. When you open an area, it spawns all the buttons. And as long as I'll have to create different interfaces. I think I have one more. I want to add a command center or some type of post, or, I don't know, deck. Some kind of place where you would meet with the, I don't even know if they'll be superiors, or you'll meet with somebody. And there's a lot of parallels between my concepts, what I want to do with this game, and some of the designs of some older games like Starflight or Star Control, or Star Control 2. Escape Velocity Nova was one that I think it was a fantastic experience, but it's incredibly open world, like where half the story could get shut out by player decisions and stuff, and it was really intricate. And I don't know if I could ever pull off something like that, but the dream is the dream. I would like to be able to tell a story through interactions and exploration, and even telling the story of just designing this game in the process of designing the game. So there's another few things that I want to add to my to-do list. I need to add more parallax layers. I think it's parallax layers for star depth. Is my opinion at the moment, at least, that I don't have enough. You can kind of see, it almost looks like there's like a foreground, and then way back there's the back layer moving around. I feel like there should be a middle ground, another set of stars in there that moves somewhat more in line with these. to give it more depth, but because it kind of does feel like it's a little room. Well, it looks nice. I like the way it looks and the way this works. There's a lot of these were made using noise generators and such, and there is another tool, really fun, totally free tool actually. You can grab it. I think I've got a link on the website actually. Load. Yeah, there's a tool here called Spacescape that you can grab totally free. It's, I guess its intent purpose is to just make skyboxes for video games, and instead of that, I use it as kind of like, sort of more like GIMP in a way. You can add and remove layers and increase and decrease the, what's it, lunicarity, I don't know how to say that word at the moment. Lacunarity, or there's, you know, settings for ridge lines and coloring, and essentially you piece together layers and blend modes to create these gaseous clouds, and these are assembled further in 001 by blending them together as additive graphics or additive layers on top of each other. So each of the sprites making up the backgrounds, to achieve that effect, you would pretty much, you would start with a background layer. This one right here is my current background layer. It's hard to see, but it's green clouds, and it's not additive, but everything above it. Let's see. So, yee. 1 second. And okay, well, actually, yeah, the second layer's, if you have the additive set to on, this will provide like the additive blending when you layer them together, so you get this nice kind of, it's not, it changes colors where they line up, and it also blends with the atmospheres on the planets and everything, so you get this really cool effect. But that's one of the things I want to do, increase the number, because there's, I think it's about 7 layers, and even that's, you know, it's missing some of the depth. One of the layers of stars is moving too much for my taste. But that's something else to work on as well. Meanwhile, I've got the orbit station, or the orbit menu, not the orbit station. What am I talking about? The docking orbit screen has no real interactivity yet. I don't have these 2 buttons set up, and what I want them to do is call up like a dialog screen once they're interacting with one of those buttons. But that's something I haven't designed quite yet. I don't know if you guys want to watch as I fiddle around with the sizes and designing the interfaces, but it's something that I'll probably have to do. You know, usually when I'm designing an interface, I create a duplicate. So I actually, where did I stick those? I'll create a duplicate or a template basically. So this was an original one of the layouts, and if I'm designing the layout for one of these interfaces, I tend to work with, you know, really simple shapes. But here in 001 Game Creator, you can use the window behavior or the window field. It's basically a 9-tile style. Like, I wonder if I can stretch this out and demonstrate some of the splitting. Yeah, it'll split at certain points, so you can kind of see like there's a corner tile. Oh my gosh, this upper corner here is moved over here. There's also these center pieces. I'm not sure what dimensions make it split up like this, but sometimes it doesn't work all the way or work correctly, and when you get too small it gets all squished and weird. But it's made up of these 9 little sections. There's middle section, the 4 corners, and then the 4 sides. And I would just usually I just make a couple of these and drag them around till I get, you know, all the basic shapes in place. Sometimes I want little headers or you know, a frame. I just kind of throw these together to draw out, sketch the design. And I did the same thing with a couple interfaces, and that's how I usually do it. And I'm probably going to do it for most of the interfaces in the game. And once I settle on a design, I believe this was the one that I finally settled on for both of the stations and the orbit menu. So let me cancel that. You go back here, and yeah, it's the same layout. Eventually I got to the point where I had the this little dialogue log, or scanning log, or action log, I don't know what to call it yet. Hover tip display. It's like a little screen that shows what you're pointing at and what you're reading, what's happening. But that's how I got the basic layout. Then you kind of, I will reference all the sizes of the different elements, and you know, have this field is 224 by 368. And in the case of a lot of these pieces, I can make like just a basic. Let me actually pull up in my template. I can make pieces. I think I have an interface template that I made. Interface. Where are you? Ah, yeah. The colors are backwards. So that's, you know, a grayscale gradient kind of thing, and the inlay color I probably want to be, you know, a little bit darker. I think I would use more like, not quite that dark. In order to get it to look correct in the other program, I have to use this really dark gray. And then the bevel can't be as light as it is. It must be slightly darker. There we go. I mean, that's better. Kind of looks weird where it fades in there. But I would basically do this. There's a process, just finding the colors that I need to make the correct gradient. And this is, I think that, yeah, this is set up already to be the size of this background element. But if I turn off the reverse colors, and I would make it something more like 48, or no, not 48, but like 160 by 48. I can get the different pieces that I would, you know, I can assemble into an interface. But that's just the middle step, middle step. I find the size first. Come over here to create my gradient. I get these shapes, and I can take this basic shape already. Let's just save that as a test interface example button. So I'll just pull an example button into here. So I'll pull up my examples. This is very simple, almost comically simple, but I also have this set to auto crop, so whatever I render gets cropped down to the correct size, but I didn't render this at the correct size, so it's also not set to auto crop. So that gives me this textured button, or textured interface element. I could drop it right into 001, and I've got my piece right there. If I want a different shape, I could make a square. gradient. But the other trick, I could also darken it a little bit so it closer matches the color of the texture. It doesn't yet. I think I have to darken a little bit too much. Maybe to 6. Even that's almost, not quite. That didn't even, that made it way too dark. So we'll just try that again and go to 6 manually. I think it was 5 that I wanted even. Goodness. That might even be too dark. Where'd it go? Here, I'll get rid of you. So I'd have to turn it down by a little bit just to match the texture color. So at least, you know. Oh, and it's very, very shaded underneath. It's very dark. Well, now we have several nice little buttons. You can also just make them round or circular and whatnot. That's just a small tool for creating masks, grayscale masks and gradients. Really helps for interfaces the most. I can assemble all these pieces and prototype the interface really quickly. Get this all colored and all, you know, the little inserts. It's just the same process pretty much. It's the same process. I think you'd reverse the colors or the interior of the button to, why is that all the way over there? To get like an insert and then colorize and texturize it. Which these, there's a bunch of these types of bumps in the Patreon pack on my Patreon. I don't know that I don't have many interface pieces, but a lot of it's, you know, intended for stuff like this where you can colorize or texturize or use the bump shapes to create these different textured shapes. So we'll go back over here, I think, checking out the ping field. Oh yeah, so it's going to be the buttons that I want to mess with. No. Each of these needs to be enabled or disabled based on the type of hotspot that is being pointed at. And right now, they only have the one condition. They're disabled if something is selected. They're enabled if something is not. So that's going to take some thinking. I might need to sit down and write out something on paper, but I'll go take a look at it really quick. Scooch in closer.
Scanning.
Scanning. Docking.
Entering planetary orbit.
Alright, so once you've landed, orbited, or not landed, once you've orbited, once you've scanned, and you can select
Life
these little
forms
guys.
detected.
These become active, but what I want is only the certain types to permit these to become active. So right now it's basically, if nothing is selected, they're disabled because they can only perform an action on a hotspot if it's selected. So we want it to be like, you know, this right here is a fauna hotspot and this one's a flora hotspot. So far, I need to do better little icons. Asterisk and the @ symbol are kind of weird, but a fauna hotspot and a flora hotspot. A flora hotspot is definitely a deploy probe, and a mineral hotspot is a deploy probe. But I'm not sure about fauna because there's potential there for, you know, sending crew down to interact with more dangerous fauna and trying to capture one or some such. And that might be something for the rover to do. Drop the rover with the crew instead of an unmanned probe. So I need these to be enabled or disabled based on the type of hotspots. How I'm gonna do it, I might have to actually sit down and write this one out, but we'll see. I'll see what I'm looking like. I'm sitting at about an hour here. Well, I'm gonna jump off for a bit. I'll actually try to jump back on here. I might not have too much time. Ultimately, it's small steps, one thing at a time. It does sometimes seem like you should just speed through and try and squeeze in all the features you can as quickly as can. And I know I've done that. I've done that to myself. And in the case of these two menus alone, that's, the majority of the game takes place in these menus outside of the flight menu. So there's three main menus, essentially the combat and then docking or orbiting. So it's important for me to focus on each one specifically and try to, I don't know, I want to sketch out things in more detail than the first time I sat down and tried to do a video game when I was 25. Now that I'm 35, I can definitely see some of my mistakes I've learned from my past a little bit. There's still a lot of things I do not know how to do and I do not understand. And math is not one of my strong points, so I definitely have to do a lot of Googling, a lot of experimenting and testing different things. So bear with me as I piece all this stuff together bit by bit, and hopefully you guys will learn something while you check out what I'm doing, or it might just be interesting to watch me fiddling around with all these different programs. But it's been awesome. You guys have a good evening or good morning. I'll stream again tomorrow night. Or I guess actually it will be tonight, May 3rd. Probably sometime after 10 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Come check out some more of this nonsense.